Hey, Dominic, so we're getting to the end of the work year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever decide that, like, as you get to your annual performance review and things like that, you think, oh my gosh, I need to quickly do a whole bunch of work to make myself seem like I did more work during the year? And then thus I am a contributor to this team, this product, what's going on?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, do you feel like the stewards did that today?
I think they did. Just so they could feel powerful by using things they'd forgotten existed.
Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup with all the latest F1 rumors, with the almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here has been carefully researched for hours to make sure it's totally founded in logic, reasoning, or in truth. Or not. Who knows? So, that was the Qatar Grand Prix. Dominic, did we get anything right?
Difficult. I predicted that Merc were terrible, and in some ways, they kind of were.
Yeah, both drivers were complaining about balance during the race. Lewis on the medium, George on the hard, and then wondering why they went back to the hard. So, yeah, I'll give us a point for that.
Then I said Ferrari would win. Sadly, it didn't happen, and I even predicted Sainz, so it's kind of definitely a no pointer there.
No, there's no way to get around that one. Yeah. So then Max doesn't bother showing up, and Colapinto gets the bump. Well, Colapinto almost shouldn't have bothered showing up.
He definitely got a bump.
Felt bad for the guy. That wasn't his fault at all.
Yeah, it wasn't his fault.
And then I said McLaren's slide continues. I would say technically no, but according to the result sheet, yes.
Half a point.
So we're going to go half a point on that one.
Half a point.
And then Red Bull buying out Perez's contract. I don't know where to stand on this one because technically no, but I think there were some rumors this week of like he's done.
He has to be. He has to be. But we'll save that. We'll save that for our occasional segment that nearly didn't happen. So how are we doing in the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I mean, we're still there. If we string together, 5-6 more seasons like this, we'll definitely be in.
Sweet. What about in the NFL terms? I assume we're still just basically getting
the NFL terms, we're not doing great, but that's fine. And we're still batting .318. We haven't changed our batting at all.
Well, at least we're consistent. That's something.
Yeah.
Did anything happen between races this week? It was only a week.
It was a short week, but some stuff did happen. Max got very drunk.
Oh, did he?
Oh yeah. There is a thing on Instagram that's like somebody does a recap of like they call it the Red Bull Comedy Hour or something like that, and it's essentially all the fun clips of things that Max or other Red Bull drivers, usually Max, have said during the weekend, be it on radio or in press conferences and things like that. And this one he was drinking, instead of having his usual can of Red Bull in the press conference, he had a Heineken Silver, I believe is what it was.
Okay.
At one point, he was like, I need another beer. So he was already at least 2 beers in. Apparently, he was drinking a gin and tonic with Dutch TV.
Okay. I saw him making Red Bull, vodka Red Bulls on Viaplay.
Yep, he did that. There was a lot.
Okay. Do we know if George also managed to have as just as good a party with his win?
I feel like George is just that, like...
Nobody cares?
Well, yes, nobody cares, but also, like, drinking and partying feels beneath the stature of somebody like George.
I see.
He definitely is a raging alcoholic, but he's never going to admit to it in public.
Okay, I can see that. See that.
Like most Brits.
Oh, applying stereotypes there. That seems, let each person speak for their individual self.
Fair enough.
What else happened between the races? We got drunk drivers, which never drink and drive.
Yeah, well, that was during the press conference. Max even said something like that along the lines of like, "Well, they don't have to drive anymore, so I'm going to drink."
It's all good.
Good job, Max. Way to be a role model for young children.
Yeah, I mean, at least he's being honest about it. He doesn't have to drive, so he can drink. It's fine.
Yeah, it's great.
I suppose related to Max being apparently 3 sheets to the wind and all trolleyed up, he showed up to Qatar while not wearing his Red Bull clothing. And I was kind of surprised that if he's not going to wear his Red Bull clothing, I thought he'd wear his own personal brand with like the M4X, the Max brand on that. He didn't do that. I think you used your spy skills to see if it was AlphaTauri, which I think it might be.
I believe it is AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri commented on the F1 Instagram post where they were like, drama, Max shows up not wearing a team kit in the Qatar paddock, and AlphaTauri was like, yeah, but we like this look. So I assume it was AlphaTauri clothing, which led to some wonderful speculation between us that we knew instantly wasn't going to happen, but man, we wanted it to happen. That Max was going to spend the weekend in the AlphaTauri and they were going to promote Liam into the Red Bull, in which case you get Liam versus Perez in equal machinery to see which one's better there, and you get Max versus Yuki to see how that would go down. That's the perfect thing they should be doing.
It should be noted that we have reached out officially to the Red Bull press team for a comment on this. They have not yet reached back to us, though, so we will update you next week if we have a response.
Yeah, I did also really like the 4 world constructor driver, or the 4 driver champion merch that Max was wearing. I thought that was, or that they made for Max. I thought that was very good.
Yeah, it's very good. I thought it was. I wonder how long it took them to come up with that, though, because I feel like I'd have missed that until I'd printed the bad T-shirts and then realized that it was right there and then didn't do it.
I mean, you asked that question of Apple. I saw that on Threads.
Yes. Why did Apple choose? You know, it's because Apple knew that Max was going to win the championship and they didn't want to confuse the marketing branding.
Or have to worry about suing him for trademark infringement.
They could have sponsored him for the last 2 races of the season. It would have been perfect. Perfect for your Christmas gift by Apple. Buy yourself an M4 Max. It comes with a little Verstappen sticker.
Right. And then we got official word that Cadillac is in as the 11th team in Formula One.
Is this really Cadillac? Is this Andretti with a different sticker on the box?
I haven't seen any confirmation of it is or isn't. But if it isn't, that's got to feel really bad for Andretti. Because essentially, I feel like they convinced Cadillac of like, yeah, come on, we can come in and do this. But I think I saw something of except they're in some ways picking up the remains of the Andretti bid.
Of most interest is Michael Andretti. He's the young one that wasn't very good, correct?
I mean, he is younger than Mario. He is older than Marco.
But he doesn't have the championship, right?
Neither does Marco.
I know, but Mario does.
Mario does, yes. He
Michael
won
Andretti,
in 77?
Yeah, in a Lotus, I think.
Yeah.
So Mario Andretti is on the advisory board and is like the president or director or some highfalutin fancy-ass title for this team. So it's got the good association. But Michael Andretti, who couldn't drive a Formula One car to save his seat throughout the whole season.
To be fair, his teammate was Ayrton Senna.
True, but that, you know, just like Perez, you get beaten by your teammate is one thing, but not being able to successfully do well in the rest of the race, you know, you can drive your own race. He was the original association with Andretti, and he is not partaking in this, so I don't know.
Fair enough.
Feels like there's some bias going on there.
If you remember, like, there as part of like one of like there's the Senna Netflix show came out. I've not watched that yet. We should save that for some off-season viewing and maybe do a podcast on it.
Yes, that would require me to subscribe to Netflix again.
Yeah, a free trial. Just do it real quick.
Yeah, then I have to have another email address, and I don't get my reviewing history. But I try to do 1 month at a time.
Dominic+1@gmail.com.
Yeah, I suppose I could do that.
Dominic plus Netflix1@gmail.com.
2, 3, 4, 56,
4 or 5. There we go. Yeah.
So do we think this is going to spice up Formula One next year? Do we think that General Motors with the Cadillac brand is going to bring value? Does this mean that we're going to end up with a safety car that's a Cadillac Escalade?
That would be awesome. Well, safety car or a medical car would be great for the Cadillac Escalade. The biggest question I have is because I know Cadillac is going to be, or GM is going to be making the engines in 2028, I believe. Or they're going to use Ferrari for 2 years and then they're going to be making their own engines.
Oh, is it Ferrari? Interesting.
Yes. So the question I have there is, do they know how to make a small, efficient 1.6 liter V6?
No,
I don't think so either.
Which is why I have this theory that in 2026, maybe late 2025, we will hear that Cadillac's engine isn't really coming together, and they will get an exception, and they'll be able to put the LS engine in the back of the car.
But a big block V8.
No, I think the LS is actually quite a small block V8. So it's not compact, but you can fit that in like most sized cars without too much trouble. So you can do it.
Automotive, it is a small block V8, but automotive YouTube would be all over LS swapping a Formula One car.
Yes, and on some level, I deeply need this to happen because it would be amazing to see everybody carve out the exception to allow Cadillac to do it. Which related, apparently Audi have already admitted that the engine is going to be the worst on the grid, and I'm trying to work out whether they accidentally hired everybody from Alpine's engine department or not.
Oh, Audi was going to be making their own engines?
Yeah. Audi's making their own engines they will be on the grid with an Audi engine in 2026.
Well, if they're even on the grid at all, because something that did happen between this week that's not on our list is they sold 10% of the team they haven't even taken over yet.
Yeah, because who wants to be associated with another terrible year? But they did score points today, but we'll save that for later.
Right, but I just think that's like, it's one thing to be like, we're taking over this team, we're kind of running this team. It's like, we're already selling off our stake. Before. Did they follow like the Honda rules of how to be a Formula One team?
Almost. It's more closer to how BMW did it, which feels appropriate being a German sports brand mark. Because, you get the engine, you get the team, you build the engine, you seem to do kind of okay. But then right before it's important and you have to actually do it, then you just give up and walk away from it, just like they did with Sauber before. So it's going to happen again. So clearly Audi is going to be really in it for 2028, and then they're just going to give up. There is apparently MBS drama, which is not surprising.
There is MBS drama. So I am a big fan of, if you haven't watched them, Josh Revel on YouTube. He puts out great videos. A lot of the times it's like looks at, young and upcoming F2 drivers. He's done a lot of stuff about that. He's done some career retrospectives of like, how good is Max Verstappen reality? Where did it all go wrong for Daniel Ricciardo? He has some videos out like that. They're usually very good. But he had one the last week that was how Mohammed bin Salman has his tenure of the FIA has not gone well.
He's power crazed. That's its problem.
Yeah, there was even a thing of last year, like the Qatar Grand Prix, of him like texting a steward in the steward's room who he's friends with, like what he thought the outcome should be, which is like a weird putting your finger on the thumb. And then this week came out that, or today I saw, it was either today or yesterday before the race, that he does not care at all about the Grand Prix Drivers Association and what they think, because it is not their job to try to help the sport be better. Their job is to drive the car, and they just need to shut up and drive the car.
This is what you'd expect from Ferrari, or somebody who used to run Ferrari and then ran the FIA, where the consideration is that the driver is just there to drive the car, and it's all about the car. And I feel that this is a mistake, and MBS seems to be subscribing to it, versus John Todd did a pretty reasonable job of running the FIA.
Yeah, this strikes me as like, this to me is always a slippery slope, because you look back, and I know some of it's very well dramatized. If you look back in history there have been some very quick drivers, Ayrton Senna and Niki Lauda, to name two, who have tried to be very vocal advocates as drivers of like, hey, we need to do more to improve safety. Hey, we need to do this. And, it wasn't until really Senna's death where everybody went, oh, a really good driver actually died. Like, maybe we should do something about this. So it's just this case of, yeah, I think the drivers do need to be in the loop, because they're the ones who are affected by things like penalties and safety and stuff like that. And, you can like Max Verstappen, you can hate Max Verstappen, but Max Verstappen is going to drive right to the letter of the rules. And if you as we saw in Austin, for instance, you might think he absolutely deserved a penalty that he pushed Lando off, but according to the rules, he was 100% correct. So, and that is not Max's fault, because Max is that good of a driver that he is going to read the rules, know the rules, and exploit the rules to his benefit. And that's in some ways part of Formula One.
If you want people to drive to the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, you need A, better stewards, B, to be brutally honest, looser rules, and you have to accept that that's a thing. And we don't want that in sports. There are places in the world maybe that make sense, but in sports that is not the place. You need to have the letter of the law, and that means people will exploit not even a loophole in the rules. They will exploit the rule because that's what the rule is. You go up to the limit and you stop. And if you really want it to be less, you need to move that limit to be something else. And I don't know whether that's necessarily appropriate in the situations this season where we've seen people pushing up against the rules.
The spirit of the rules is all great fun when you're playing a family game of Monopoly, but when you're talking about, a sport that has, where the difference between 5th and 6th place in the constructors is $10 or $20 million, and that could drastically affect your budget for the next year, there is no spirit of the rules. There is only the letter of the rules, and the letter of the rules say I can do this or I can't.
Right. And if you want to do that, change the rules.
Yeah.
Shall we do the segment I was trying to avoid, but appears to have come back again because of late breaking news?
Let's do it.
Okay. Does Blank still have a job this week? Apparently everybody continues to be gainfully employed, except for breaking news right after the race. Ocon is being replaced in Abu Dhabi by Jack Doohan, and I don't really understand why. I mean, I get that he, A, binned it, and B, has been a bit of a mouthy git recently, but it feels weird to, like, replace somebody for the last race of the season.
Well, the real question is, would he still be eligible for the rookie test?
I was just thinking exactly that, and I think he is. I think it's 2 Grand Prix.
So Ollie Behrman is not eligible for the rookie test.
You are correct. He did. There was a conversation about that a few months ago about how he, in fact, is not eligible for it, just like Franco isn't.
Right. And Fernando Alonso.
No, he's a rookie. He's always a rookie. Every year.
I was thinking that it would be really great if drivers' contracts, because right now they have yearly contracts, right? Like you are a Mercedes driver from January 1st, 2020 something to December 31st. How great would it be? And I really think this is like one thing they should change is if drivers' contracts expired at midnight after the Sunday of the last Grand Prix, and then like the next year started like Monday at 12:01. So essentially, you have these so you have, the race ends, the season ends. And then essentially, if Lewis wants to go down to Ferrari and during the tire test on Monday or Tuesday in Abu Dhabi, he can go do the tire test with Ferrari and start to get miles in the car and, start to see how the development's going for 2020 next year.
Did you hear his comments on exactly that topic?
No, I didn't. Does he agree with me?
No, he doesn't.
Ooh.
He says that when he gets in that Ferrari for the first time, he wants it to be the appropriate outing that respects that brand rather than trying to cram it in at the end of the year in like just a weird thing that you do. And he's like, I would much rather be able to go out and have the appropriate first drive in the Ferrari at Fiorino, and just do the thing in. I think he used the word private, right? He wanted it to be, the most respectful thing or something for the mark. It seems a bit weird, but also Mercedes said he couldn't do it because apparently he did ask them, and then Mercedes were like, "No, we've got you signed up for so many ridiculous promotional things. You don't have time for that."
Wait, they haven't signed the guy who they didn't want to be an ambassador for. They have signed up for promotions in the last month of his contract to get all the ambassadorness out of him that they can before he falls to Ferrari.
Correct. Suspicious.
Dahmer, get your shit together.
Yeah. I don't disagree with the sentiment, except I think it should actually end mid-season. I think the way it should run is it should run out in the middle of the season, like in the middle of the summer break.
Ooh.
And so that is the opportunity for you to re-sign for another year. And it lets all... It's already the silly season where you're signing up for the contract because everybody renews their contract, but it should actually be that it expires at that point. And per your point last week about the transfer window, you shouldn't be able to renew your contract until the last car has crossed the line at the last Grand Prix before the summer break. And that 4-week period should be the transfer window.
I like that.
Okay. Yes, so Ocon, Doohan, I don't know why. It seems ridiculous.
Yep. And Perez and Lance Stroll still on the grid. Jesus, both of them.
I can't believe... Okay, Lance Stroll is weird, and I agree he shouldn't be in there, but you kind of understand why he's still there, right? You understand that because his dad owns the team. It's just the way it's going to be.
No, actually, I don't understand, but we'll talk more about that during the race, because there were some radio messages from Lance Stroll that...
Ooh, I missed those. Don't tell me.
Yeah.
But
that we
Perez,
spoke about during the race.
Let's roll this into the...
sprint race, because it's relevant, yeah.
It's relevant, because Perez... who starts from the pit lane because he made some changes to his car because it was really bad. I can't believe I'm about to say this. He didn't really notice that the light had gone green in the pit lane start. So Franco Colapinto overtook him in the pit lane on a pit lane start at the beginning of the sprint race. And did you see Christian Horner's comments afterwards?
Yes, but
yeah. Christian Horner was like, they were asked him, was like, what happened? And Christian was like, yeah, he's supposed to go when the light goes green. We're going to have to talk about that. And I'm like, he's still in your car, Christian. It's all in your control.
Did you hear Perez's excuse?
Oh, no, I didn't. I'm excited for
So
this.
Perez said that the reason why he was waiting and why he let Colapinto go is because he wanted free air to test his setup changes.
I'm sorry, what?
He wanted free air to test his setup changes, which I think is somewhat of a noble goal. However, you're in a Red Bull, he's in a Williams. You could still have free air given when the light goes green after the field goes by past him. And also, did you see the onboard and see that the medical car had to wait because the medical car was like, there should be cars coming out of the pit lane, and there's not because there's been a green light on for the last 2 seconds. Actually, if we're talking about changing up Formula One, this is a great reason why Formula One cars need car horns.
Beautiful.
Because what would you do if you were stuck at a green light behind a car? Just hypothetically, let's say it's the Red Bull Mini, and you were stuck at a green light with the Red Bull Mini parked in front of you. Wouldn't you be on your horn being, hey, Red Bull Mini, let's go?
Yeah. I assume that what Perez was really saying is that he was just going to wait so that he had free air because he really, really wanted free air. What is he? I'm pretty sure one of the crashes he has had in the last 12 months has caused him some sort of medical issue, because at this point, I question his logic.
Well, here's another thing, because if you actually wanted free air, why did you then spend your whole race 1 second behind Colapinto?
He wanted to check it without free air, and he just messed up his conjunctive subjective verb, or whatever the word it is.
I still think the most plausible explanation for all of this is he does not want to be in that team anymore, and he is daring Red Bull to buy out his contract.
Yeah, it's got to be the anyway. Anyway, moving on from the section I didn't really want. Oh, we did sprint recap.
A sprint race happened, and the biggest thing was they told Lando, don't change positions, and Lando gifted Oscar a win.
What I really loved about that was everybody got out of the car and nobody was particularly enamored by it. Piastri was like, yeah, I suppose it's a win. And Lando's like, yeah, I gave it up for him because I thought I probably should. And just everybody, it was just sour tasting across the board.
Well, that's the problem with team orders and stalling positions, because it didn't feel good in Brazil either.
Yep. Should we talk about the race?
Let's talk about the race.
What did happen? Oh, yeah, it was a great
should we talk
start.
about qualifying?
Oh, we probably should talk about qualifying. You are correct. Yes, there was that part of it, which was very boring, except
for the fact that Red Bull found some pace in their car, and suddenly Max got on pole.
Talk about sandbagging.
Yeah.
Yes, he got it on pole, but he didn't get it on pole. He merely had the fastest lap in Q3.
Well, he got the pole position award.
Did they take that away from him?
No, I don't think so.
Because it's not technically pole position.
But it's not starting on pole. It's who had the fastest time in qualifying. Because if he had a 10-place grid penalty for changing power units, he would still get the pole sitter award.
I see.
And then his grid deduction would occur.
I see.
It is not a you start first on the grid award. It is you got pole position award.
So would you like to explain to the listeners exactly how this happened, that Max Verstappen was not starting the race on pole despite having the fastest lap?
I will do my best, because I honestly don't understand it. So during qualifying, I think it was the preparatory lap for their final lap, I think is when this happened.
I think so. I want to say it might actually be the cool-down lap.
Oh,
It might be. I might be wrong. Don't take me at that. Nobody write in and complain.
Different preparation. It does say driving necessarily on the cool-down lap. So sometime after a fast lap in Q3, Max was driving unnecessarily slowly on the racing line. George came rocking up behind him and could see him the whole time, and was also on a cool down lap.
Yes.
So not doing a fast lap. So George was also on a slow down lap. And then rocked up behind Max, had clear view of Max, decided not to slow down his car, and then complained that Max was in his way. And granted, Max was on the racing line, but he could have just gone around him. No, it's not possible. It's not possible for him to have gone around him. It's impossible for someone who is entitled to that corner to, in any way whatsoever, have chosen to go around him in a situation where it didn't matter if he'd slowed down a bit more. But the result of this was Max got a 1-place grid drop and 1 penalty point, which you think of all the crazy things that happened. Let's just pick one out. What if somebody was to roll off the start line when it was an aborted start and going out onto the track during a wet formation or trying to do another formation lap when they shouldn't have done another formation lap. You think when there were marshals on track, you think that would be a good indication of maybe that should get a penalty point, but no, that only gets a $5,000 fine.
And a reprimand.
Yes. Slap on the wrist.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is, you can get into British bias or something like that, but this is a really weird penalty. I saw some people were looking back at how often has this happened? And there have been some one-place grid drops, but it's also weird that it comes with a penalty point. And this is, I think, the only time somebody has gotten a penalty for driving slowly on a slowdown lap. And, to talk about drivers not maintaining the delta, that's fine. But there were 17 cars that did this at Vegas. And I don't even think there was so much as a reprimand that happened.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It's very confusing. And I think this is important that we should quickly review who the race stewards were because it sets us up for a deeper conversation. But there is more on this topic because apparently George was involved and more than just by the person complaining. So we've got George Connolly, chairman of the Australian Institute for Motorsport Safety, FIA WMSC member, FIA Scientific Advisory Committee member, Matteo Remery, F2 and F3 steward, Formula E steward, a member of the RACB National Sport and Appeal Court. I think that's Belgian. And then Derek Warwick, British bias, former Formula One driver and world sports car champion. I love that the title for him is not, 57-time steward or experience in this. It's like world sports car champion. You know what he likes people to know. And then Amro Al-Hamad, the national steward, because every race usually has a national representative. So those are the stewards that were apparently, per Max Verstappen, swayed by George Russell's vindictive personal vendetta against Max.
You should be more clear about what you're actually talking about. Is apparently George was lobbying very hard that Max should get a penalty for this in the discussion with the stewards.
Indeed, so much so that Max Verstappen has said that he has a lot of respect for all the drivers, but he no longer has any respect for George. Congratulations, Max! You've finally reached the point the rest of us have. Yes, it was very weird. I thought it was kind of unjustified. I mean, if you want to complain and whine about it, you should have given him a reprimand and told him it was a naughty boy. You could even have chosen to give him the penalty point. I don't think they should have given him the grid penalty. That just seems weird.
The penalty point seems doubly weird because you think of all the incidents that haven't accrued penalty points, and this is one that does.
I feel like penalty points get accrued for doing something that could have caused harm to somebody else. And I feel like if somebody hadn't been paying attention, George had plenty of time to pay attention, but if he'd been sat on that line and it was somebody who was on a hot lap, he'd have got rear-ended, and that seems bad.
I think penalty points have proven that the closer you are to 12, the harder it is to get a penalty point.
No, because stewarding is consistent. Everything is applied with balance, logic, consistency, understanding the logic. There is no opportunity in FIA stewarding in Formula One for any inconsistency whatsoever. Andrew, how could you possibly think that?
It's all inconsistent. I think that's what bothers me the most.
Exactly. It's truly awful, and it's really very annoying, and they do need to fix it.
The thing is, interestingly, if you look at the NFL, which famously does not have full-time officials, all their officials are part-time, but they at least do a very good job of pulling highlights from, the previous season and being this was a pass interference call. This wasn't a pass interference call. Regardless of whether or not the officials called it on the field, they do a good job of looking through the offseason and say, this is holding, this is not holding. So it almost feels like we need something like that for FIA stewards at Formula One, because it's you had a false start, here's your penalty. Oh, you were driving along a straight and didn't even lift for double wave yellow flags, here's your penalty. And I agree, it's fine to be some sort of gray area on there, but at least even in the NFL, there are some things about how they can enforce, what they end up calling, depending on where it happens during the play, it could be defensive holding, which is 5 yards, or pass interference, which is a spot foul. So, and there is definitely a spot where this is clearly defensive holding. There's definitely a spot where this is clearly pass interference, but there is a crossover point of it's it's within, I think, 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, but he was 5.5 yards and the ball hadn't been thrown. So what do we call it? There's obviously some sort of interpretation there, but at the same point in time, there needs to be almost a lookup table of like, this is what we are investigating. This is the penalties that have been applied in the past. Or at the start of the season, this is how we want to apply penalties. Because if you're going to have inconsistent stewards throughout the whole season, then you need some guidance from like one steward to the next. Like, yes, we think that not lifting under a double wave, not slowing for double wave yellows should be anywhere between this penalty and this penalty. And depending on the situation that involves, depends on how you enforce the penalty.
Speaking of more penalties, should we start going through the laundry list that starts on lap 1?
Let's do it.
So the start was fun because George whiffed it, which was great because George is George, and kind of things happened. But then somebody managed to give themselves a false start, which was Lewis Hamilton, and by about a third of the way through the races when they eventually decided to give it to him. But it was pretty clear that he got a false start, and I would say that in previous seasons, in the first half of the season, he would have probably gotten away with that, but they changed the rule after Lando really screwed up in, was it Jeddah? I think it was Jeddah, where he rolled, stopped, and rolled again, and Red Bull were on the blower saying that's a false start. There was a change in the policy, and it's now no longer movement that stops before the white line. Any movement within your box is a false start. So Lewis started out with a 5-second penalty. And then we also have Piastri, who you informed me was doing weird things even before the formation lap.
That was on the reconnaissance lap. We don't have a decision on that one yet. But yeah, he dived in front of Lewis going back into the pit lane, kind of at an unsafe speed. It looked rather aggressive. I assume they're just going to be like, hey, don't do that again. Pay a small fine, things like that.
Right. So we did that, and then we drove around for a while and nothing really happened.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I think was George's penalty or Max's penalty really didn't matter when George is not that great of a driver. We did get a safety car right off the bat though, with Hülkenberg hitting Ocon, hitting Colapinto, which thankfully didn't hit the Williams front wing because they only have one spare wing left for the entire season.
Yeah, that's not good. But I feel for Colapinto. I don't really feel for Ocon because I feel like he probably was involved, but I do think it was Hülkenberg's fault.
And then there was Lance Stroll proving once again he doesn't know how to drive a Formula One car because he understeered right into Alex Albon and sent Alex Albon spinning around.
There was a lot of understeering this weekend, certainly in the race, as everybody put on silly tyres because it was apparently cold, unlike last year where it was hilariously hot.
But speaking of, we teased something of Lance Stroll's radio messages in.
Oh yes.
In the Does Blank Still Have a Job? He wanted to immediately retire the car after he got that 10-second penalty, and they made him go out.
Hanging out with Lewis.
Sounds like it. But there's definitely some more of like, I don't know how badly damaged the car was. He did get a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. And then you want to talk about like letter of the law versus spirit of the law. It's like, well, they served the penalty and then let him do a lap before he retired. So then it like doesn't carry through the next race. And I think at some point in time you have to be like, did you really serve that penalty?
Yes. And I think if you're going to do that, you have to. The way to enforce that is if you say to the driver that you're going to retire the car before you serve the penalty and then choose not to do it, then you should. That's bad. Whereas if they let the driver think that it's all going to go and they're going to do the things, and then that's slightly different.
I would say you have to be classified in order to serve the penalty.
Oh, that is spicy.
I mean, why not? I mean, because there's a whole thing of like, so, if you want to drive to 90% rate distance and then retire the car, that still gets you classified. Yep. Fine by me. But like, I would say that in order for the penalty to count, you have to be barring like, substantial crash damage. Like you can't make it, you have to be classified for the penalty to count.
I do not disagree with the sentiment, but I feel the opportunity for driving a truck through the loopholes of your car is sufficiently damaged as you see one of the mechanics get out a sledgehammer and start hitting the car. I don't know. I wouldn't put anything down. I wouldn't put anything past an F1 team.
Sure, but you also get to a point of where if your car looks sufficiently damaged, they'll give you the black and white flag, which is like, hey, so they'll give you the black and white flag. And, maybe at some point in time there is like a cooling malfunction or something that is causing the car damage. But Lance Stroll's car honestly looked pretty damn fine.
It looked reasonable to me. I feel like he just wanted to go out and party. I don't know who he'd party with because I don't know if he's got any friends.
I think he didn't want to do the whole race like from last, way in the back, and just having a miserable time. Because he was already like last.
And little did he know there was more safety cars and more opportunities because other people who ended up at the back, they managed to make a jump. So especially when a certain team put soft tires on and they didn't last more than a few laps.
Yes, but some drivers have talent and skill, and Lance Stroll might not have any of that.
You raise an interesting point. Anyway, so Stroll, whining, doing weird things, retiring.
I mean, if he doesn't want to drive the car, I fully support that decision, and he and Nicholas Latifi can go learn how to be business majors together.
I don't think Lance is going to become a business major. I think he's got too much money. He's going to become a test driver for Aston Martin.
Is he not already?
Oh, deep cut.
So then somebody's mirror got knocked off.
Yes. Oh, it didn't get knocked off. I think it shows that it no longer wanted to participate in the race.
I mean, if it's good enough for Lance Stroll, it's good enough for a carbon fiber mirror.
Indeed. So K-Mag's mirror popped off halfway around the track, right on the basically just
not halfway, right at the start-finish straight.
Well, it depends what you consider the start and the finish, right?
The line on the track.
Okay. The A line? It was halfway to turn 1. How's that?
Sure. Okay. Sure. I'll give you that.
And then it sat there in the middle of the racing line.
With all the commentators and everything going, hey, you have a mirror sitting not necessarily on the racing line, but definitely where people are going to try to go for overtaking.
It was the alternative racing line for those who wish to move forward in the race.
Unless you're Lando Norris, who only tries to go around the outside of Max Verstappen, but we can get there later.
But at this point, we're watching it, and we're wondering what's happening, and every team is like, clearly, because it was around the time everybody really needed to start pitting, they were A, goal hanging, and B, coming out into the pit lane being like, no, it's going to be the safety car any moment now.
Yeah, like, I think everybody watching at home thought it should be a safety car or a VSC. Every team mechanic was ready for it to be a safety car or VSC for a massive stop queue.
Yep.
And except for the race director, who didn't see this needing a safety car until it was obliterated by Valtteri Bottas.
At high speed, and that wing mirror that thought it had a nice lazy afternoon of just sitting around at a nice warm track, it was no longer with us. It was in a million pieces everywhere.
And some of those pieces immediately got picked up by Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton to cause some punctures.
Yes, immediately, and it was ridiculous, and unacceptable stewarding.
But that's not stewarding, that's the race director.
Sorry, unacceptable directing.
Yeah, for a guy, that was not good when everybody went, hey, this needs to be a safety car. Like,
yeah, it was ridiculous.
You remember way back when like Twitch played Pokemon and there was like democracy versus like anarchy sort of stuff?
Yes.
I almost wonder if we should have like anybody who wants can like download the F1 app, and at any point in time you can hit like there should be a safety car button, and if you get to like a critical mass of like yes, we need a safety car, then suddenly a safety car happens.
So like 80% of all people watching, and it stays above 80% for more than 10 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
Then you get the safety car. Okay, great. Yeah, I support that.
Twitch watches F1.
Yeah, it's the alternative is to allow the sprinklers to spray water on the track. That's the other one we should do it for.
Yeah. But you think about like, oh, this race is boring. It'd be great now, a safety car, and everybody starts spamming the safety car button. Oh, that'd be fantastic. But in this case, it was a safety thing. It's like, there needs to be a safety car here. And then finally, once two drivers' races were effectively ruined, they did call a safety car.
Finally.
Yeah. And then that led to even more interesting infringements. Well, during this, there was the double wave yellows.
Yes.
And Max did the right thing and lifted, and Lando closed 0.6 of a second on him very quickly, and Max went, Lando didn't lift. Which I believe Max had been, or Lando had tattled on Max, essentially, at some point in time during the season.
Baku.
And I love Max being like, oh, if we're going to tattle on each other, you need to look at that.
Yes.
Can somebody go look at that?
Yeah, and having seen the traces between the end of the race and now, Max not only lifted, he also braked.
Whoa.
He did appropriately slow down, and Lando didn't. Credit to Lando, before we talk about what happens in a moment. Credit to Lando, he was post-race said, everybody knows that in double wave yellows, you should slow down. You're taught it in kart racing. I let the team down today. I don't know why I didn't lift. It's my mistake, and he totally owned it. So credit to him for doing that. Yeah,
and to be fair, I think that was it. It seemed like a harsh penalty because it was a stop-go 10-second, which I don't know.
Have we seen one of those in like a decade?
That is an old school penalty for sure. When that used to be like the minimum penalty.
Yeah. I love stop-go penalties, and we'll see another one of these, a drive-through penalty. I think they are better penalties than 5 seconds and 10 seconds.
Yeah, I kind of agree that the minimum penalty should be a drive-through penalty, because the other thing about like having a drive-through or a drive and stop is you have to serve it within 3 laps. So it's none of this, oh, I made a mistake, I'm going to build a gap sort of thing. It's like, no, you need to be caused pain now because you screwed up now.
Yep.
And I think the only way that works is if stewards make quick decisions, which historically has not been their strong suit.
Yes.
Like, because I think if you have good steward or a good race director who relays things quickly to stewards and stewards who are willing to act quickly, then I think you can do more immediate penalties that are harsher.
Yes.
Versus, oh, it's going to take us 15 laps to investigate an incident and come out with a penalty. Like Lewis's false start, like that we should have known that by almost the end of lap 1.
And I think it's important in this context of the double wave yellows that they have the telemetry on every car. They should know everybody else who didn't do it. And if that involves giving the whole field stop-go penalties, except Max because he did lift, they should have done that.
Yeah.
That should have been a thing. And I feel like there's enough technology, maybe technology is not the right word, that all of these are slam dunk. And to the point of the spirit of the law, you also have to enforce it consistently.
Yeah, everybody else did it is not a good excuse when it comes to especially something like safety. And I understand them throwing the book at Lando in this case because it's not like, oh, well, I actually tried to go a little slower through the corner because there was a double wave yellow. It's like, no, you're on a straight chasing down the race leader and you didn't even attempt to lift.
It was ridiculous, and he deserved it, and I'm glad he got it, and I am very excited to see the stop-go penalty resurrected from the cemetery of previously used penalties. But then, because Bottas had driven over it shortly after this, we got a safety car, but because there was now thousands of tiny little pieces of carbon fibre and mirror and glass sprayed all over the racetrack, they took people through the pit lane. Which apparently Lewis forgot to brake in time for. And so he was caught at 12.5 kilometers an hour over the 80 kilometer an hour speed limit. And he gets a stop-go penalty.
No, he just had to drive.
No, sorry, not stop-go penalty. He just got a drive-through. And because he was speeding in the pit lane, and Lando was the one that tattletailed on him. So everybody's tattletaling on everybody. He deserved it. It was 12.5 miles an hour over the speed limit. You should be pressing the pit button. But this then caused Lewis to become Eeyore. He was like, I'm just going to retire the car, man. I'm just going to come into the pits and I'm just going to turn it off because there's no point in doing this race anymore because it's so bad, it's terrible. And then apparently Bono said, you can do that, but then you will have a 5-place grid penalty in the next race. So do you really want that? And then Lewis was like, fine. And then quit complaining and then managed to go fast and did a pretty reasonable job of coming from the back, even though he was in a whiny, broken car.
Which this actually... in kind of our between race discussions, we talked about, how apparently it's been since 2016 since Max has seen the checkered flag outside of the points.
Excluding retirements.
So actually has to see the checkered flag. Lewis, apparently, if you forgive the brake magic chaos that was 2021 Baku, was 2012, except for today.
Yeah, so there we go. It's all ruined.
Ruined.
So.
Yeah.
It's perfect for his new career at Ferrari, where he will blaze the trail.
But then we got going again after the safety car. Max didn't have the best getaway. Lando had a really good getaway, and then tried to go around the outside of Max Verstappen once again.
Where do you not want to go on Max Verstappen? On the outside. Like, if anything you should have learned of watching it this year is don't go around the outside. You've got to go around the inside and do to him what he would do to you.
It is amazing to me how much Lando continues to try to always go around the outside of Max Verstappen. It's like he will not learn. He will not adjust his racecraft. He just goes, oh, well, there's an opening around the outside. Oh no, I've been pushed really wide by a charging Verstappen.
It's so weird, and I don't understand it. Like, if nothing else, you pretend to go down the inside 3 times in a row to try and, you pretend to go around the outside a few times to trick them to make them block it, and then you sneak down the inside. But no, apparently can't do that.
Well, I think Max knows Lando well enough to not fall for the faking around the outside. Lando has to, and you look at how Max has defended in the past, where you see people try to overtake, and Max try to overtake, he goes for the inside.
It's ridiculous. It makes no sense, and I can't support the behavior of Lando not learning from what he's seen for the past 6 months, 9 months.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from, like, is Lando Norris a championship driver? And it's like, that is one thing that Lando needs to figure out, is adapting your driving style to the overtaking somebody in front of you, because that is clearly, like, he has one move to try to get around Max, and it does not work unless he has an insane amount of pace over Max. And meanwhile, you see the good drivers like Max and Lewis will try different things. They try different positions. They'll sell a dummy on one lap to set up a move on another lap. The people who are playing chess while Lando is playing checkers.
Exactly. And I would like to point out that Lando was with a teammate. His name was Carlos Sainz, who has learned how to do this.
Yeah. Did you see the thing between the race of Lando saying that Max wouldn't have won the championship in the McLaren?
I had forgotten about that. Yes, Lando Norris was saying if he and Max had been in the same car, he would have won and Max would have lost. And I don't understand how anybody could possibly come to that conclusion.
I think that's one of those he has to say to, like, keep the team and engineers and everybody else happy, but I think it's an absolutely delusional take, and sponsors.
He doesn't have to say it. He wasn't... I don't think the question was asked in such a way that there was only one answer. I feel like you don't need to answer it in that way. Like, it feels very strange.
I think the answer was something along the lines of, I have to say no.
Right.
Like, he knows it's not the right answer, but it's what he said he had to say.
But then he doubled down with a description of the situation. It was very strange. Did anything else happen? Oh.
I think there's a good question about whether or not that Red Bull is actually the third best car on the grid, or Checo is just terrible. Because I think the reality is, like, if you put a more competent teammate in there, maybe they still win the Constructors, because, you know, there were a lot of times this season where it was like Max and the McLarens versus, like, you know, Max and a teammate and a McLaren up there in the points. So, you know, I don't sure they're third, but I'm not sure they're second or first. Because that Red Bull was terrible after Imola.
Sure, yes, but he doesn't... Perez was so terrible. Here is the stat that you need to remember in this situation. In the last 8 races, Guan Yu Zhou has outscored Sergio Perez. In the last 8 races. And just to make this clear for the listeners who may not be as familiar with the stats as we are, Guan Yu Zhou only scored points today.
That's terrible. That's in the Sauber that is just trash.
It's terrible, and it had a good race today, but that's no excuse for Sergio Perez being terrible. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Sergio Perez's car didn't break. He just whiffed it and then tried to cover it up, and then he decided he needed to pretend that it was retired.
I lost drive.
As you listen to the live replay of no drive being lost and the car spinning and then him driving off and deciding he's going to be done. Lewis wanted to retire and was whining like Eeyore. Perez just did it because he doesn't care, because he's trying to force them to fire him. He wants $20 million to sit at home on his cabana enjoying the sun. George Russell got a 5-second penalty after the race for something I can't remember. Oh, a safety car, something infringement. He
was not within 10 car lengths of the car in front, which means he had to be of like 20 car lengths back, because there's so many times that they let that go.
Yep, but that didn't change his result. He was 7.3 seconds ahead of Carlos
Gasly.
One of the two. Anyway, he was 5 seconds, didn't make any difference. So, anything else for the race?
Oscar Piastri got a warning for his diving in front of the pit lane on the reconnaissance.
Oh, we have a live update. Okay.
The 2 cars in front of him were traveling very slowly, and he wished to overtake them. The team provided telemetry information that car 81 was not traveling at an excessive speed, and the driver was in control at all times. However, the maneuver appears erratic in the video. We determined that it was not dangerous. However, such a erratic maneuver should be avoided, hence the penalty of a formal warning is applied.
Is this the same as when I get stopped by the police for driving aggressively and I point out that I was just annoyed about the 2 grannies in front of me driving at 5 miles an hour trying to get onto the freeway and I just go around them? I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Driver of the day, who couldn't wait for it to be over? I'm going to go with Charles as my driver of the day because he helped stick it to McLaren, because now maybe I'm previewing Constructors' Championship watch, actually, so I'm not going to say any more. My driver who couldn't wait for it to be open was Lewis, but I'm also tempted to give Perez this award because he kind of binned it and gave up, as I previously alluded to.
And he was actually having, for Perez, a decent race. He was like 6th.
Yeah, until he whiffed it.
Yeah. My driver today was Max, purely because he did things and nobody else did things. I know that there was some action lower down the grid, and Guan Yu Zhou got the actual driver of the day, which I understand that's a good vote. But Max, he had to get first place off the. This is a race where only the pole sitter has won, so Max became the first non-pole sitter yet still the pole sitter to win the race, which is cool. And then on top of that, he had to survive not one, not two, but 3 safety car restarts in the lead and continue to do that. And a Red Bull that has been terrible on its cars or tires, has been an absolute tractor in the last couple of races, actually looks somewhat okay today.
Yeah, seems reasonable. And who couldn't wait for it to be over?
Oh, I also gave it to Lewis because he was just, it's so sad. He's just had such a bad weekend, after, was it qualifying or sprint qualifying where he's just like, I'm just slow. Like,
yeah, he was interviewed and he said he doesn't have it anymore.
He doesn't have it. He's just slow. And Max was like, nope, he always has it, and I hope he finds his drive again. So kudos to Max for trying to build Lewis back up.
Yep. Maybe they can have a beautiful friendship. Like Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna did eventually one day, maybe. Not really.
Maybe. No, they actually did. So maybe what Max should do is he should invite Lewis into Team Redline for some off-season endurance sim racing to help Lewis regain some of that fire.
I support that. I would like to see Lewis doing some sim racing. Championship watch?
The Constructors is still up for grabs. Ferrari is, 31 points behind McLaren?
I think it's slightly less than that. The McLaren had to outscore Ferrari by 21 points to put the lead gap to 45 points for them to seal the deal, and they didn't because Lando forgot to lift in a safety situation.
Good job on Lando for coming back and at least getting like a point for today.
I think he got fastest lap as well.
But, as part of Red Bull's comedy hour, Max made a comment of he's really happy it rained in Brazil. He has also extended his point lead on Lando in the last 2 races as well.
Perfect.
So let's see. Wait, he didn't. Oh, that's Constructors. So essentially, in the last 5 races, Lando has only outscored Max once.
Lando doesn't have it.
No.
Speaking of Lando not having it,
it is 21 points in the Constructors right now.
21, okay.
Which it's not impossible, but they're going to need some help.
I am rooting for Ferrari, but we'll talk about that in a moment.
Oh, and Sergio is now officially locked into 8th in the Constructors' Championship, which is the lowest a driver has finished with their teammate winning the World Championship since doing a full season. No, wait, not doing a full season. Since Jos Verstappen in 94, doing a full season would be Niki Lauda in 85.
Yeah. Good job, Perez. You've got it. You're definitely coming back next year. But speaking of Lando, Charles is now only 8 points behind Lando in the Drivers' Championship. So Charles could get P2 for the second time, like 2022.
That would be so lovely.
I need Charles Leclerc to outscore Lando by 9 points because I need Ferrari to get a 1-2 and outscore Lando because it would be perfect and it would make me very happy.
I could see Max slotting into P3 just to help all this along.
Yes, I think Max might actually be willing to do that. Take some rumors.
I don't think we have much this time around.
Yep. I have one after a comment that was made by the commentators yesterday. Apparently, during free practice, George managed to get his laps screwed up because his engine map didn't notice that he'd gone through a corner because they expected him to lift, and he kept the throttle pinned.
In 8th gear.
This was in 8th gear. And this surprised me, and I'm going to make the very spicy statement that if you have an engine map that is so configured that if you happen to full throttle it through a corner, it gets very confused and can't deploy your power properly, you are not driving your car unaided.
Yeah, this is definitely... I did see this come up, and it was one of those wait, I thought driver aids were not allowed, so how come you can have this exact engine mapping, but you can't have traction control and you can't have ABS because those are driver aids?
Yeah, I dislike this.
It's all about, how the battery is deployed.
I get it, but When we get to 2026, where they've got more magical buttons or something that's supposed to be related to this, that you know they're going to have some ridiculous animation. What it should be is a button that the driver presses, and they press it and they hold it and then they let go of it, and that's it. They shouldn't have this. They can have a choice on how it chooses over that time period, but you have to initiate it. They shouldn't have this like, oh, you happen to go through a corner. Like, really, people?
Or it's similar to like what the F1 game is, if you have like slow, medium, or like store, neutral, and, you know, fast lap or whatever. Of like, you know, you have the mode that it'll dump all the battery throughout the lap. You have the mode of, well, it'll dump the battery, I think, over the course of 5 laps. You have the mode that's like, oh, it's equally good recharging or storing and deploying. And then you have the mode where you're just recharging.
Yep. So I feel this is terrible, and I feel even worse about the fact that it's George that has exposed it to me, because it makes me feel like all the young drivers are particularly bad at this. Because if you remember correctly, in 2020, when Lando got his first podium on his final lap where he did a blinder at Austria, that was him getting coached by his Will Joseph, his engineer, being like, this one, lift here, go here, lift here, turn here. And I'm just like, that's not driving the car unaided, please, people. And I'm not saying they don't need some assistance. I'm not saying they don't need a little bit of coaching. But there's a certain point where if you're on a top-tier team and you're fighting for the championship, oh my lord, people, please.
The driver's radio only goes one way.
Indeed.
You know what actually we need? Because AI is taking over the world, we need like the Codemasters Formula 1 AI, where like you have to say the exact right thing of like, tire update. Yes, we see that you are on 3-lap-old softs. We're expecting this to go to the end. Like,
so it should be powered by Siri, and then you can say tire update, and it will say retiring the car.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Predictions for Abu Dhabi?
The only thing I like about Abu Dhabi is the day to night transition of the race. Everything else I absolutely hate about Abu Dhabi. It's a terrible track. It's been a little bit better recently, but it's a terrible track. Sector 3 is still awful, and there's no way to fix it because somebody put a hotel in the way. It's just, I want Ferrari to win the constructors. Yes. I think that would be great.
Yes.
I want Charles to get P2 in the championship. I think that's a great prediction, you know, but I don't care about, like, I'm not saying I don't care about this race because I'm going to watch it. I'm going to enjoy I hope I'm going to enjoy watching it, but like everything's wrapped up for the most part. Like
everything that matters is wrapped up.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like, I want to see a dramatic safety car. That's what I would love to see.
And everybody's okay, though?
Yeah, everybody's fine. Like, it doesn't even have to be a big crash. Just like a dramatic, like, because Latifi binning it in 2021, that was not a big crash, but it was a dramatic safety car.
Fair. So what you're saying is we want the Constructors' Championship decided by the new race director pulling a Michael Massey because he doesn't want to deal with the FIA this for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and I want Zach Brown on the radio going, "It's not right.
It's not right, Rui. You've ruined my race." But okay, so I think we're done. We're waiting for your feedback, as always, at the brilliant email address of feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com, where you should let us know your conspiracies, your feedback, and your wants. And remember to tell your friends to like, listen, rate, and subscribe to this amusing podcast that contains insights that you will not see anywhere else.
Did Toto actually refer to Michael Massey as Mikey?
Yes.
I love that so much. No, Mikey, no, it's not right.
The question I have in that situation, is that how Michael Massey was referred to by everybody? Like, because, you know, sometimes people have their name, they're like, you know, their given name, and then they choose to be known by another word, and I'm very curious what that one ended up being.
The biggest thing that it reminds me of is, I don't know if you are... when did you come to America?
2004.
I think this might have missed you, and I don't know if it's in the UK, but there is a... Are you familiar with Life cereal?
I am aware of the brand, but I do not have it in the United Kingdom.
There was a commercial for Life cereal in the 90s that was essentially these 3, I think, brothers. And, you know, it looks like an adult cereal, but it tastes pretty good. And the whole thing was like, well, I don't want to try it. Let's make the younger brother try it. And the younger brother tried it, and it's like... hey, Mikey, he likes it. So, like, referring to somebody as Mikey just, like, brings me back to that, like, Life cereal commercial. So, like, Toto saying, like, no, Mikey, no, it's not right. It's like, oh, Mikey doesn't like it. Like, it's...
Life Serial are missing an opportunity to rerun or remake a new advert with Toto Wolff and Michael Massey.
100%. Of just like, yes, Mikey, this is right. Like, come on, it'd be so good. It writes itself.
They can sponsor the cars.
I mean, now that General Motors is in Formula One, General Mills needs to do some sponsorship.
It can be called The General. Oh, wait, no, hang on a minute. We're not allowed to do that.